In Search of the Miraculous by P.D. Ouspensky. Chapter 4. G's lectures led to many talks in our groups. There was still a good deal that was not clear to me, but many things had become connected, and one thing, often quite unexpectedly, explained another, which seemed to have no connection with it whatever. Certain parts of the system had already begun vaguely to take shape, like figures or a landscape which gradually appears in the developing of a photographic plate. But many places still remained blank and incomplete. At the same time, many things were contrary to what I expected. Only I tried not to come to conclusions, but wait. Often, one new word that I had not heard before altered the whole picture, and I was obliged to rebuild for myself everything I had built up before. I realized very clearly that a great deal of time must pass before I could tell myself that I could outline the whole system correctly. And it was very strange for me to hear how people, after having come to us for one lecture, at once understood what we were talking about, explained it to others, and had completely settled definite opinions about us. I must confess that at such times I often recalled my own first meeting with G, and the evening with the Moscow group. I also at that time had been very near passing a ready judgment on G and his pupils. But something had stopped me then, and now when I began to realize what a tremendous value these ideas had, I became almost terrified at the thought of how easily I could have passed them by, how easily I could have known nothing whatever of G's existence, and how easily I could have again lost sight of him if I had not asked then whether I would see him again, whether I could see him again. In almost every one of his lectures, G reverted to a theme which he evidently considered to be of the utmost importance, but which was very difficult for many of us to assimilate. There are, he said, two lines along which man's development proceeds, the line of knowledge and the line of being. In right evolution, the line of knowledge and the line of being develop simultaneously, parallel to and helping one another. But if the line of knowledge gets too far ahead of the line of being, or the line of being gets ahead of the line of knowledge, man's development goes wrong, and sooner or later he must come to a standstill. People understand what knowledge means, and they understand the possibility of different levels of knowledge. They understand that knowledge may be lesser or greater, that is to say, of one quality or another quality, but they do not understand this in relation to being. Being for them means simply existence, to which is opposed non-existence. They do not understand that being or existence must be of very different levels and categories. Take, for instance, the being of a mineral and of a plant. It is a different being. The being of a plant and of an animal is again a different being. The being of an animal and of an animal is a different being. But the being of two people can differ from one another more than the being of a mineral and an animal. This is exactly what people do not understand. And they do not understand that knowledge depends on being. Not only do they not understand this latter, but they definitely do not wish to understand it. And especially in Western culture, it is considered that a man may possess great knowledge. For example, he may be an able scientist, make discoveries, advance science, and at the same time, he may be, and has the right to be, a petty, egoistic, mean, envious, vain, naive, and absent-minded man. It seems to be considered hear that a professor must always forget his umbrella everywhere. And yet, it is his being. And people think that his knowledge does not depend on his being. People of Western culture put great value on the level of a man's knowledge, but they do not value the level of a man's being, and are not ashamed of the low level of their own being. They do not even understand what it means, and they do not understand that a man's knowledge depends on the level of his being. If knowledge gets far ahead of being, it becomes theoretical and abstract and inapplicable to life, or actually harmful, because instead of serving life and helping people the better to struggle with the difficulties that they meet, it begins to complicate man's life, brings new difficulties into it, new troubles and calamities which were not there before. The reason for this is that knowledge, which is not in accordance with being, cannot be large enough for or sufficiently suited to man's real needs. It will always be a knowledge of one thing together with ignorance of another thing, a knowledge of the detail without a knowledge of the whole, a knowledge of the form without a knowledge of the essence. Such preponderance of knowledge over being is observed in present-day culture. The idea of the value and importance of the level of being is completely forgotten, and it is forgotten that the level of knowledge is determined by the level of being. Actually, at a given level of being, the possibilities of knowledge are limited and finite. Within the limits of a given being, the quality of knowledge cannot be changed, and the accumulation of information of one and the same nature within already known limits alone is possible. Let me read that sentence again. That's hard to understand. Within the limits of a given being, the quality of knowledge cannot be changed, and the accumulation of information of one and the same nature within already known limits alone is possible. The change in the nature of knowledge is possible only with the change in the nature of being. Taken in itself, a man's being has many different sides. The most characteristic feature of modern man is the absence of unity in him, and further, the absence in him of even traces of those properties which he most likes to ascribe to himself, that is, lucid consciousness, free will, and a permanent ego or I, and the ability to do. It may surprise you if I say that the chief feature of a modern man's being, which explains everything else that is lacking in him, is sleep. It may surprise you if I say that the chief feature of a modern man's being, which explains everything else that is lacking in him, is sleep. A modern man lives in sleep. In sleep he is born. In sleep he dies. About sleep, its significance and its role in life, we will speak later, but at the present, just think of one thing. What knowledge can a sleeping man have? And if you think about it, and at the same time remember that sleep is the chief feature of our being, it will at once become clear to you that if a man really wants knowledge, he must first of all think about how to wake. That is, how to change his being. Exteriorly, man's being has many different sides: activity or passivity, truthfulness or a tendency to lie, sincerity or insincerity, courage, cowardice, self-control, profligacy. I don't know what this word is. I'll spell it for you. Profligacy. Irritability, egoism, readiness for self-sacrifice, pride, vanity, conceit, industry, laziness, morality, depravity, and all these and much more besides make up the being of a man. But all this is entirely mechanical in man. If he lies, it means he cannot help lying. If he tells the truth, it means he cannot help telling the truth. And so it is with everything. Everything happens. A man can do nothing, either in himself or outside himself. But of course there are limits and bounds. Generally speaking, the being of a modern man is of very inferior quality, but it can be of such bad quality that no change is possible. This must always be remembered. People whose being can still be changed are very lucky, but there are people who are definitely diseased, broken machines, with whom nothing can be done. And such people are in the majority. If you think of this, you will understand why only few people can receive real knowledge. Their being prevents it.